Let's just start a great big fight. Pocket pistols are worthless. Right, Tom?
No.
Okay.
Fight!
So the discussion out there is pocket pistols, and I don't even have a really good definition, but pocket pistols, are they appropriate for self-defense? I've heard some people say that the smallest caliber you should ever use is .380 or 9mm. .380 is no good, or we can't use a .32 ACP like the Sea Camp or something like that. For years, my backup gun was, don't laugh, a Kel-Tec P11. It was a 9mm double stack P11 that cost me $230.
I thought you were going to say it's like a Colt 1903 or something like that.
No, it was actually a modern gun.
Okay.
It was inexpensive. It fired every time, and I could hide it just about anywhere. I had it on a little rig inside my vest underneath my shirt. But we're talking about a pocket gun, and I'll lead into this with one of the very first training videos we ever saw at the police academy. It was a South Carolina officer called Trooper Coates, who ended up shooting his bad guy 6 times with his .357 Magnum. And the bad guy shot Trooper Coates once with one of those North American Arms 22 Magnum revolvers. Trooper Coates died, and the bad guy lived. And this just started an entire debate about caliber and the size of the gun and things like that. And unfortunately for Trooper Coates, the bullet went under his arm and hit him in the armpit, crossed over, cut the aorta, and killed him. And the bad guy's laying on the ground with 6 rounds of .357 all the way through him, and he survived. So as a pocket pistol, do you carry a backup gun, or do you suggest it, or what are you looking at when you're looking for a pocket pistol?
Well, a lot of questions there. I generally, if I'm just out and about in public, do not carry a backup gun. I just don't.
One should be enough.
Well, hopefully, I'm not trying to suppress those who are the big fans of the New York Reload or anything like that. It's just generally speaking, I have faith in my equipment. I practice with my equipment. And if, in a perfect world, sure, maybe, in a perfect world, we don't need to carry a firearm, right? So if we're right off the get-go, we're no longer in our perfect world. But there are times when, for one reason or another, I do need to carry something that I think could be fairly classified as a pocket or pocketable firearm, right? And that's not what I typically conceal carry. So in a situation like that, I've got a variety of basically kind of J-frame size revolvers, and whether Ruger, Smith & Wesson, things like that, made out of a variety of different materials, aluminum, the Scadium framed, all that kind of stuff. And
something that's light and easy to carry, that's what you're looking for in those areas?
Something that's light and easy to carry if it's genuinely going to be for pocket carry instances. Usually for me, if I'm going to be pocket carrying, because I think the big reason why I think this is a discussion is, why are you pocket carrying? Is it to have a second firearm, to your example? Or is it because you are in a hostile environment and carrying in your waist or your fanny pack, maybe if you're Dylan?
Yeah, because I don't carry a fanny pack.
Dylan
might.
Huge European man purse.
Yeah, sling bag.
Yes.
It's a satchel.
Satchel. That's fair. Satchel. But right. So I think the reasons why you get into that really kind of informs what the decision looks like. And for me, I feel good. And the thing with J-frame revolvers is you have to practice with them a lot, because those are not intuitive to shoot, and you got to take a lot of time to find just the right set of grips.
Yeah, and I've found I have a J-frame that I end up, it's painful to train with that gun because the trigger guard keeps hitting me in the middle finger as I'm firing with that. So something that people need to pay attention to. Also, if it's a pocket gun, I would love to have a shrouded hammer or a hammerless type gun, striker fired auto. That Kel-Tec I had, it was a hammer fired gun, but the hammer was shrouded inside the slide. And then we roll around to this caliber debate. Very first gun that I can ever remember seeing, handgun, I can remember seeing as a kid, was my father's Western Derringer, chambered in .357 Magnum. He bought it from Herter's, the old Waseca, Minnesota mail order house in the early 60s for $18. And .357 Magnum, out of a 2 7 or 1 7/8 inch barrel. Big fireball,
lot of noise.
lots of noise. Certainly, that's a stout enough caliber to stop someone. I also wouldn't want anyone shooting me with a Sea Camp 32. I just don't want bullet holes in my body. So I'm not going to argue too much about what caliber a person must use to stop an assault. I just want that gun in play and shooting the bad guy.
Right, and reliable. The right bullet in the right spot will do what it's needed to do, right?
Yeah.
And the question is, how do you maximize your chances for doing that? And part of that is it has to be in a package that you can shoot and you will actually carry. So I'd rather have a 22 than nothing, right? I'd rather have a 9mm than a 22. But there may be times when maybe I can't take that 9mm. So maybe in that case, hey, the 22 or the 380 or the 32 ACP or whatever it is that we're talking about will be the best call, because under the circumstances at the time, that's the gun you could take.
And certainly knowing your ability with that firearm and knowing the capabilities of that caliber and that firearm, you know, that 32, that North American Arms 22 Magnum revolver, that we watched that Trooper Coates video, that shot was less than 3 feet when he fired at the trooper from where he was. That's probably the effective range of a micro-sized revolver that he had hidden in his pocket when he drew it on the officer. You need to understand what you're going to be doing with that. I wouldn't want to use that Derringer that my father had for anything more than a get-off-me gun. Just press it up against the bad guy, cock the hammer, and fire from there. I don't think I could hit anything past 5 feet with that gun. And it comes back down to training and practice, so you know your abilities and the capabilities of what you're shooting.
Right. I mean, you absolutely have to be able to shoot it. I mean, a lot of people, I think one of the biggest disservices towards really the Second Amendment and getting people into firearms was, really up until recently. You still see it in some stores. But if you brought your wife, your girlfriend, a female friend into a store, what would the guy behind the counter probably say?
Oh, little lady, you need a revolver. And he'd give her, a 38 Special, a snub-nose revolver.
Right.
Which, honestly, no.
It's so hard to shoot.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so hard to shoot. You got to be practicing with that a lot. I mean, I get it. You don't have the limp wristing and those sorts of issues. So in that sense, it's going to be more reliable. And we got to remember too, in today's modern day and age, the expectation for most firearms, most handguns you purchase, is it's going to work out of the box. Right? I mean, to my mind, I think Glock just set that bar. You and I are both old enough to remember the days where it's like, well, you got to feed it 500 or 1,000 rounds to break it in, right?
Get it, make sure that it's set up and reliable.
Right.
No.
Right. Yeah. No, that's just no longer the way that I think consumers are going to be tolerating how things go. But I think that used to be, I could see the argument for that. So you don't have limp wristing issues, and theoretically it should work. Without having to go through the so-called break-in period, assuming you didn't have timing issues or something like that. But just in this day and age, I don't see the reason for that. And in actually almost a perverse way, things like J-frames and snubbies and things like that, you have to really be practicing with those. That's not really kind of the casual's weapon. To be effective with it, actually, I think takes a lot more training than if you had a Glock 19 or something like that.
And again, I'm going back to capabilities and at what range you're using that. But if we're talking about, and I know I said I'd start a fight that pocket pistols were worthless or something at the beginning of this segment, there's some elements of a pocket pistol you have to have. You have to be able to draw that pistol from your pocket. So understanding what you're going to be wearing, and you get the old monkey fist problem if you can slide the gun into your pocket, but then you reach in and wrap your hand around the gun and you can't pull the fist and the gun out of the pocket, that's a problem. You have to make sure that the gun is not going to hook up on anything, that the hammer spur is not going to catch, or that the sights aren't going to catch, or anything like that. So to me, all those indicators mean that a pocket pistol is an extreme close quarters combat gun, not 10 yards or 15 yards, but I mean from contact to 3 yards tops.
And we haven't even really talked about holsters to make sure you don't have a negligent discharge or something like that. You put your finger on something that I think a lot of people who, if they're still reasonably new to firearms or new to carry, they may not be thinking about. And that's, you mentioned the sights, right? How many modern day sights, if you just go to a store online, hey, I want to get aftermarket sights for my Glock or something like that, you're not going to get a ramp style sight, right? That's not what we're thinking about. But you go over to revolver world, and the sights, rather than, coming up, if your pistol's like this, right? Generally speaking, your sights are kind of this rectangular box. That's going to snag if you're drawing from a lot of different styles of holsters, right? I mean, Kydex, no issue, but if you're going to be drawing from a lot of styles of leather, certainly the cheaper ones, or if you're drawing from pocket or something like
a
that.
little nylon holster that you
right,
shoved in
you
there.
want the ramp that you see comes from the shop with those revolvers. Like, there's a reason why they're designed like that.
And I want people to understand that if you're choosing a small gun, that you're also fighting some of the physics. A lot of people go for the little 380, the Ruger LCP and things like that, because it's small, light, and easy to carry. Even with that 380 ACP, that tiny little gun will jump in your hand and will be difficult to train with, and thus more difficult to shoot accurately when you're at close range. And not to besmirch Ruger or anybody else who's making small guns, typically on small, easy to hide guns, the sights are small and difficult to see. So you're point shooting,
trench sights.
Yeah, at very close distance.
Yeah, and that's definitely not a knock on Ruger or any of these companies that are making these firearms, because they're not designed to be, be the online operator, at 300 yards.
Yeah.
No one's Elmer Keithing this with their trench sight J-frame or something. I mean, that'd be fun to try, stage the trigger, how far can we go? Elmer Keith, of course, was hitting with his 44 Magnum, or 44 Special maybe, if you go back far enough. 400 yards was what he was shooting that thing. He had this special Keith way of shooting.
And that goes to somebody, again, who, like you said, who shoots a lot. So I'm not going to tell people not to carry pocket guns. I'm going to tell people to carry them effectively and properly, which is cover the trigger guard when it's in your pocket, have some sort of pocket holster, and then look for the attributes of this gun that will allow you to get it into play against the bad guy. And you said the right round in the right spot will usually do the work. I'm going to go one step further and say that shot placement is more important than caliber every time. There may be some people who are going to argue and say, well, yeah, 22 is not going to work at all. It's not going to slow anybody down. I've always said for years and years, nobody stops to ask what caliber you're firing when they hear the bang and they realize that they're being shot at. And
you're going to move.
Yeah, somebody
right.
and it's going to be, ow, that hurt. Maybe I should stop doing what I'm doing. But yes, bigger is better. I will grant that. I would tell people to use the biggest caliber they can effectively shoot, but shot placement is more important.
I don't want to be shot, period. But if I do, I'd rather take one, in my thumb with a 44 Magnum than to my heart with a 22.
Good point.
Just at the end of the day, I mean, to be clear, Internet, I'm not making that active choice here. I don't want to be shot at all, but it's just at the end of the day, it's shot placement is king.
Yep. So before we go, we did mention people what we thought would be the best pocket pistol. What, in your estimation, would you, if you were to carry a pocket pistol, what would you like yours to be?
If you're willing to commit to training, I am a big fan of J-frames, snubbies, things like that. They offer a lot of protection. There's all sorts of different loads you can do, different calibers. You can go up, you can go down. That's a whole world, but you have to be ready to commit to that. Outside of that world, maybe a 380 Glock. I'm a big Glock fan, so it's just kind of where my head automatically goes with lots of things. But you're looking at some sort of slim, subcompact, realistically, and then a good pocket holster.
Yeah, and for my part, I'm right with you on the revolver. I would like a shrouded or hidden hammer, 38 special revolver, with the 2-inch barrel or the 1 7/8 barrel. North American Arms made a really nice little 380 auto loader, and to be honest, I haven't seen one for a while. I'm hoping that they're still out there, but to me, that was a palm gun. It fit in your hand really nicely. You could slip it right into your back pocket, and they made a fold-up pocket holster for that as well. A great gun to carry in your pocket and put 7 rounds of 380, I think it was, downrange. So, all right. Well, thanks again for your insight, Tom. Truly appreciate you taking time to talk.
Thanks, Kevin.
Now, before you go, if you think you're using the right caliber for self-defense, think again. And you might not even know it, but your ammo could be putting you at severe disadvantage when you pull the trigger. Click the link in the description below to watch this short, unbiased video comparing the top 4 self-defense calibers and see if you end up changing handguns.